Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Monta. I'm the Associate Director of the Nanovic Institute for European Studies. Welcome to our spring film series, although it sure doesn't look like that out there. Tonight's presentation, of course, involves a lot of walking, and I just want to thank you all in advance for your walking here this evening. I know that with the parking situation and the construction, it can be quite a long ways. Maybe not 800 kilometers, but long enough. So thank you. Thanks to our faculty fellows and our director and our friends here at the Browning Cinema, we're very pleased. We have an exciting lineup this semester, as you've seen on the screen. We'll show Force Majeure by Ruben Östlund, Ida by Pavel Pawlikowski, Calvary by John Michael McDonough, and tonight's film, Walking the Camino, 6 Ways to Santiago, which won the American Documentary Film Festival in 2013. All of these films, even though they're kind of loosely aggregated under the rubric of best of recent European films, something we try to do every spring, they all have to do with a sense of an ending. You probably know that the Camino has an end, right? It's a pilgrimage route of great antiquity in northern Spain that ends with a noon mass at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. By the way, sometimes I'm a little nervous talking about this film because I've never actually walked the Camino myself. So how many of you have walked the Camino yourselves? Okay. Great. Well, that's great. So now I'm even more nervous because now you know much more than I do. At any rate, it was once a Roman trade route that came to an end in Finis Terrae, great word meaning the end of the world on the Atlantic coast, which to the Romans, you can imagine, felt that way. The route has a variety of starting points. The longest distance between any starting point and the end is about 800 kilometers, 780 kilometers. Completing it gets you a Compostela, hence the name. That's a certificate of completion. So in short, the Camino is a long-standing, religious, athletic, sociable, open to the world, and achievement-oriented kind of thing. That sounds suspiciously like Notre Dame. Only if it were here, located in northern Indiana, our students would probably try to walk all 5 different routes at once. They would triple Camino. Every mile marker would have a kind of endowment plaque attached to it. So you might recall that we screened another film about the Camino in 2011 here, The Way, by Emilio Estevez and David Alexanian, starring Martin Sheen. By the way, who called tonight's film brilliant. Its title was in the singular, The Way, and tonight's emphasizes the plural. There are obvious ways to think about that difference, not the least of which is that there are multiple physical routes on the Camino. But it might also remind us of, to think about each person's experience being different on the Camino. It might remind us of another 6 characters, and at least 6, since that number is many times that in actuality. At the Institute, we've supported at least 22 faculty and students who have walked the Camino for academic reasons. Official Camino stats from 2010 suggest that there are over 270,000 ways to Santiago each year, about 100,000 of those ending in certificates of completion. So with all of this emphasis on different ways and different routes along the way, what happens to that shared sense of an ending? One of the authors of a book about the Camino once quipped, "I once walked 500 miles to attend a church service," clearly aware that some would find this risible. Since the 12th century, the Camino has been understood, of course, precisely in those terms. Indeed, all pilgrimages are oriented towards an end. They differ from hikes and walks in that the pilgrim is always conscious of a movement toward a destination, towards something transcendent, or at least an icon of that. But that said, even during an aimless journey, one's going can acquire or be fashioned in a meaningful shape by virtue of its own particularity. That's the consolation, or nausea, if you want to call it that, of the existentialist. But the attraction of worship and veneration, having ended, the focus in those kinds of cases tends to shift. There tends to be a turn inward. And I wanted to share with you a few titles of works written about the Camino during our own days that illustrate that latter tendency. First one, Affective Response and Pain Measurement Correlations in a 500-Mile Pilgrimage, published in the Journal of Internal Medicine. That sounds like a title that'll get you tenured around here. My Camino, written by, quote, a competitive world-class masters rower with an extensive background in the telecommunications industry. Interview as an act of seduction, analyzing problems I have met during my field work on the Camino de Santiago and in Glastonbury. I'll let that one sink in. That's one of my favorites. Exploring the dialectics of route-based tourism. Roads to Santiago, by a novelist about whom it said that, quote, detours are what he delights in. A Journey of the Spirit by Shirley MacLaine, or at least one of her. Off the Road, a modern-day walk down the pilgrim's route into Spain, publicized as, quote, irreverent, with quirky modern pilgrims seeking knowledge of themselves and each other rather than God. Well, what can one say to all of these things but buen camino? I would be on the lookout in tonight's film for suggestions that on the Camino, a shared sense of an ending arises from a common necessity to confront the limitations of our ideas and our feelings, from walking towards burning incense that throws into relief all our common constraints, our sufferings and our transience, and from the idea that the Camino's shared destination grounds a common method, a method which is neither purely materialist nor purely idealist, but both, what some might call logoistic. To be sure, there are many instances of that method of walking, as there are those who walk the path, and there's real warmth and genuine warmth in knowing that we walk it together. But tonight's film also has a title that, being multiple, leaves open the possibility that one of these ways may be your own. So enjoy the film.